Welcome to the Making Spaces podcast. This is a podcast about making space for people, literally and figuratively, where we talk to artists, designers, we talk to builders, we talk to social creators, people who make space for other human beings. And I'm really excited because according to Josie, you do both as both an artist and activist. So Josie, give us a little background on your friend, and then we'll hop into the question we ask everyone, which she didn't prep you for, did she? That's the part you should be nervous about. All right.
Yeah.
I love the spontaneity. So Trent, I know Trent since college. We've been friends for a little while. And I actually work with Trent pretty frequently, doing the things that he just doesn't have time to do because he's such a busy human. Trent is an artist. He does projects such as Pictures for People, which is all about calling attention and raising money for different organizations. And he just recently, I don't know if he finished it or if it's still going on, the wall mural project. He does it all, and he's very caring about other people, which is funny because he's very talented, and not every talented person is
Cares about other people.
That was great, Josie. Thank you.
Yeah, she's a really good hype woman.
You can just keep going. That doesn't make a great podcast.
You know what? He has another project. It's the Feel book. I actually just worked on this. I don't know why I didn't think about it first, but it's a book for like therapist's office, and it has visual representations and poems by the Ariel Astoria, who was recently on this podcast.
That's true.
To help kids on the spectrum or otherwise kind of resonate with their feelings and identify their feelings easier.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. All right. So the question that we usually have as a warm-up question, are you ready, is what is one of your favorite spaces and why? And you can take this as literally or figuratively as you want to.
Okay. Yeah, no preparation.
I know we're kind of asses that way.
That's okay. I can pull something. I think the first one that came to mind at the moment, because I did the digging I did do was just like reading through the bio of what this podcast is. Cause I was like, okay, what is
like what am I getting myself into?
Yeah, like like real spaces. Like I didn't, and it sort of seems like a very broad, all encompassing like theme that you can kind of take wherever and be like spaces.
Someone said time. So
time is
we've had
space.
Someone said their bed. Someone said time. Go.
Okay, now I'm going to go really literal. At the moment, I've been working with, it's this brewery that actually hasn't opened up yet because they were supposed to open in like April, and then 2020 happened. And so they had actually just been working on the interior of the space for like 2 years, and then we're planning to have this grand opening in April, and just never opened because of 2020. So they're just kind of waiting. They're doing outdoor stuff, but no one's really been allowed inside the brewery. But inside there is just like a work of art. They have like a food truck like built into the inside of the thing. And then there's like this upstairs, upper room type thing that.
What city is this in?
It's in Livermore, California. It's like San Francisco area.
Whoa.
Because you guys are in LA, right?
No,
Yes.
but everyone thinks we're in LA. Josie,
Well,
we are
it's the
not
same.
in LA. You're
Yes.
so full of crap.
It's the
We're in
same
Orange
thing.
County.
Okay,
No,
I'm not in San
not the
Francisco.
same thing.
I'm not in San Francisco, but I would say San Francisco area to you. But if someone from up here was like, they'd be like, dude, you're not in San Francisco. It's sort of it's the same thing. But yeah, so we turned the upstairs into an art gallery that I've been able to curate with a whole
I'm
bunch
making
of
a list
artists.
of places, just so you know, Trent. I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming. I just got a 1973 Airstream that I'm redoing so that I can come visit these spaces. Get ready.
Cool. I want to check out the Airstream when you come.
She looks rough right now, but she's just getting a facelift.
Well, yeah, once she gets the facelift, I'll check it out. Yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. It's called Pennyweight. That's the name of it. And so I've been doing a whole lot of work there, but people haven't been able to see it yet, which probably, yeah. So that's the first thing that came to my mind.
And you're curating an artist gallery in the top?
Yeah. So a lot of my projects I run under the brand of Only Up is what I call it. It's Only Up LLC. And that's sort of like my projects that are bigger than me, so that people aren't working for Trent, because no one wants to work for Trent, right? They'd rather work for Only Up. So yeah, we have the Only Up art gallery that's like in partnership with this brewery. So it's all in this like big beautiful space.
It's funny that you called it an upper room, because like that sounds like heaven to me. Like,
right?
yeah, that sounds perfect.
Yep.
I used to write my sermons at a local brewery here at Chapman Crafted, because my friend was the manager, and I would just, before it opened, there was no one in there, and he actually has a master's in theology. So we would sit and talk
The brewer does?
Yeah, he's the manager of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Although he's also a brewer, he's his own line. But and so him and I would sit and talk about like nerdy theology. Well, there was like 0 people around, and just it smelled like hops, and I just loved it. I loved it. And I would drink like a beer from like 3 p.m., but like the same beer. It was so good and cold till like 3 till like 6 p.m. as I'm like sitting there looking like a local.
So tell me, actually, I was going to ask you questions, but I guess
you can do that
on your podcast. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that.
I
just wanted to get your background, because like if it was
there
a
are
normal
no rules.
conversation, I wouldn't be talking about me quite as much. So I was just gonna be like, "Who are you?" You know.
Most people wonder who the hell are you? So I'm a United Methodist pastor, but I'm also a designer who helps design church spaces and whatnot. And that's something I just stepped into. I studied art when I was younger, and biology. You know, makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, right. And then theology. So I realized a couple of years ago that every church space I've ever worked in, I flipped. And so kind of realizing that space really, really matters to me. Aesthetics matter to me. Inclusion matters to me. How we're making space for people matters to me. So I realized I was making space in every thing that I was doing. And so I started a podcast, but it was like, I liked doing it a lot, and I got to talk to some of my best friends, but then I started working with Josie, and our conversations in the office, I was like, someone should be recording this because you're ridiculous. And so I just got a bunch of text messages yesterday from my friends who are catching up, and they're like, your friend is ridiculous. You two are
Josie
great together.
is ridiculous. That's honestly how we became friends, because I'm definitely like, I'll argue with people. I don't mind an argument. And Josie like seeks out arguments.
And I'm like, put me on the other part of the spectrum. I'm like getting under it. I'm Canadian, so I just want to like get under the table when people start arguing.
That's funny. Yeah.
You know, I'm an Enneagram 8, so conflict, as they say, is my love language. It's how I build intimacy.
I'm a 7-8, so like I step into it, but I'm not. But I don't like. I'm not gonna actually. Sometimes I'll try and argue with you about something. But
I'm literally sweating. That makes me sweat. The idea of arguing makes me sweat. Just the thought of it.
Trent and I actually got into this huge argument once. It was like a few hours long. It was like all day. About what it was like professional sports and how they don't matter to me and they shouldn't matter to the world. And Trent was up in arms.
I was not. I was unemotional. I just firmly disagreed with you.
So that's scarier to me than anything in the world. People who can argue with, for some reason, I keep dating 5s, and 5s just state facts to you. Like, well, and it might not even be like an actual fact, but they can just hold their calm. And I'm like,
I'm a little more like that.
I
can kind of talk about anything without,
I'm worried I'm hurting your feelings. How's everyone doing in this conversation? Do you feel included? How can I make you feel better?
I should be a lot more like you, but I'm not.
No,
I'm just trying to win. I'm trying to let you know that I'm smarter than you. You know, that's where the arrogant 8 comes out. Yeah. I know more than you.
That hat is not hiding anything, my kid.
That's funny.
So I want to hear about, now that you've asked about me, I want to hear about, so you guys met in art school or undergrad. So you both went to AP, which is a Christian school, but doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be a Christian to go there. I don't know how that would work, by the way, like an inquisition, how would they know? But when you were there and sort of did your passion for this sort of like social engagement, because from the description of some of your work, it's a lot of social engagement. So did that come from there, or was that something you always knew you wanted to do with your art?
I think, I don't want to say it did or didn't come from there, because I guess I'm like a product of all my environments. So I'm sure, things built into that. I don't necessarily think it was that I was super focused on it while I was in school. I definitely think it has a lot to do with, just how I was raised. I'm a PK, so I think, but I also I'm a PK.
You think
but
you're a PK, or I'm just kidding.
no,
You're
I
like,
was
I
definitely
think they're my parents.
I was definitely a PK, but I think with being a PK, you go one of two different directions, right? And I think
Pastor's kid for the lay people.
yeah,
Not everyone
yep,
who listens to our
pastor's
podcast
kid.
is a person of faith.
And so I think I had a little bit of that, like, wanted to think my own way kind of thing, which is like maybe why I enjoy like talking to Josie, because she's very like she will think about things a different way just for the sake of thinking about them in a different way.
She is the devil's advocate.
She doesn't try to be the devil's advocate. She just like her whole existence is
the devil's advocate.
I'm like so attacked during this episode. I'm not taking it.
You love this.
No, there's nothing wrong. It's good. I just said I enjoyed it.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I think my parents were very much always thought that way. And everything they do, they're great and have, been a part of some cool projects. So I think I just kind of always was thinking about that. And then I think for me, it was more of in school, in art school, I was more focused on how can I do this and actually make a living for myself, where they don't teach that. But I was always just I gravitated more towards like the business side of things, and arts, as much as I can make it work, art isn't the easiest way to,
What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. But in that, I think I just kind of like set my priorities very early, like how am I going to do this? And my guidelines were just like, if it's, I'm going to start a project, if I can find something that's good for me, good for people, good for my career. And so I think that good for people part, I just very early on started like in those ideas that I was, okay, do I want to tackle this project? Do I want to start something like this? I think it's just like I've focused a lot on that good for people part. And then that comes out in some different community ways. But I don't, I guess I'm not really sure where it starts. It's just kind of, it's that cycle. I won't do something unless it's like all three of those things. I don't know if I answered the question.
That totally did. Now, my question for you is, what are some of the good for people things that you have created or been a part of creating?
Totally. So the first one, which I came up with the idea, actually I think senior year of college, and I didn't start until the next year, was the Feel Project, which I approached Ariel about doing with me, which is essentially, it's a book. It's like the culmination of it is a book, but the idea is, if you've ever been to any sort of formal therapy as a child, they'll have like the smiley face charts, like, how do you feel?
Oh, they did that to me in college. I remember being like, this one?
Yeah, I think whatever. So with children, it teaches them to be like, oh, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm whatever. And then as you're an adult, like your emotional literacy needs to expand, right? So I might ask you now how you feel. You're going to give me, I'm mad, I'm whatever, but people still aren't going to be saying like, I'm pensive. There's like subcategories to all these things that we're supposed to know. So essentially, like, there's therapists with adults will use this thing called the Plutchik's wheel, the Plutchik's chart, which is this whole like color-coded spectrum of emotions with like all the like tons of different words on there. But there's no, I guess, adult visual to the Plutchik's wheel like there is for the smiley face charts for kids. So I essentially took each word on that chart, on the like medically accepted chart, and then created a piece of artwork based on like conversations with therapists and things that sort of depicted that specific word, and then had Ariel do a poem for each word. So the idea is that, someone's supposed to be able to open the book and be like, oh, I feel like this. So yeah, that's what Feel. And then after I finished that, I sort of like have a way of like starting a project, finishing it to the point where I could just like keep it going. And then I end up, my attention just goes elsewhere, which is why like I need people like Josie around, that I could be like, hey, can you do this thing? Cause I'm like all inspired with this next project right now, but I need to.
The world needs Josies.
Yeah. So I'm like, we're doing some republishing stuff with the book, which is just not where my attention has been. But I was able, I reached out to Josie to do some formatting for me, stuff like that. The second project I sort of dove into was called Pictures for People. So what happened with that is I moved up to, I'm in Livermore, in the San Francisco area, and I have a studio that's in this town called Livermore, which is like sort of a suburb of San Francisco. And outside of my studio, there's this lady who would sleep on the sidewalk. Her name was Cindy, and I would just walk into my studio and I would see Cindy and wave to her, and I maybe like bought her lunch one time or something and talk to her. She you could hold a conversation with her, but there's definitely some mental health stuff going on with her. And so at some point I was just painting and decided I was going to paint Cindy, just kind of one of those, I don't know why, honestly, I just felt like doing it. And
an inspiration.
Posted it. Yeah, I was like, I'm just going to paint Cindy and I'll take it out to her, and it'll make her feel good. So I posted it on Instagram and just like invited people to I talked to Cindy today. She said she needs a sleeping bag. Somebody sent me a sleeping bag, and blah. I'm gonna work on this painting for 10 minutes at the end of every day, and then we'll see what happens. So I just started working on this painting, and then the feedback I was getting was just phenomenal. People were all excited about this project, and then the guy who I'm pretty close with now, who actually runs the co-working space that my studio's in, had some connections with the city, and I was sort of new to this area, so he's like, why don't you keep doing this? And I'm like, maybe we do a show and I can like help get some people there. So at this point I'm all excited, so I did it 6 times over. So I built relationships with 6 other people on the street, painted them portraits, took the portraits out to show them, had video of their reactions, which was like really special. And then hosted an auction where we had kind of like the who's who of the area come to this auction and buy the pieces, and then the funds from the artwork went to a different nonprofit that the subject themselves, I say portrait subject, like I don't want to refer to people as subjects, but like for the sake of this,
I'm pretty sure that's like normal to say,
okay.
The subject of the people.
The subject of the painting.
The model.
That's better. The model had sort of picked. It did like, I get the most interaction from this nonprofit. So like the funds
that's so
would go
special.
there. So I had to build relationships with 6 different nonprofits for the 6 different people, which then led to more people coming to the event. So yeah, we did this big event, and it was sort of like black tie type thing, and sold all the paintings and raised a bunch of money.
Were the subjects cool. there? Were the models there?
Several of them were. I think
that's special.
3 of them were. 4 of them were. But yeah, all of them were very much that was a navigation process. That was a lot to navigate, just trying to figure out how to do the whole thing respectfully.
To make space in a way that honored who they were and don't make them into some sort of.
That's
there you go.
Yes, I had to make space.
Without making them be a token or a. We don't realize we put people below sometimes when we're serving. When it's about I'm serving at you, I say it's serving at people instead of with people.
Totally.
I'm not. Totally. I'm serving at you. And as an artist, you're not trying to kind of take away from who they are or decide who they are. Sometimes when we're creating things, it can create something that people aren't. We have a mural at our church that features a man who used to experience homelessness and now is on the homelessness committee for the entire city. He's called Santa Bob.
Who did the mural?
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. And his name is leaving my head right now.
Is it Brian?
It is Brian.
Brian Peterson?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's great. So
he's so great.
I met Brian, because essentially he does a project that's very similar to what I'm doing. You guys should interview Brian.
We will, yeah. He's great. He's so great. And I know him really well. I don't know why my brain, all of a sudden I was like,
I won't tell Hopefully he doesn't listen to this.
Faces of Santa Ana is his name.
Faces
I'm
of
just
Santa
kidding.
Ana.
By me, that's his
Yeah.
art. But
Yep. This is funny. I think when I started doing the pictures for people, someone just like tagged me in one of his posts, like, hey, this guy's doing something similar. And so, I just, liked a bunch of his images, and then he, commented, and then we had some conversations just to see, how we could potentially help each other out. Pick some ideas, make sure. For me, it was a big learning experience at the beginning, just in that I got so much positive feedback. So I'm like, this is a great project. And then some of those things that we talked about, just like making sure I'm, doing the whole thing, representing the people with dignity. I talked to one of the nonprofits, and I remember a very cold response from the lady who ran the nonprofit, which I was just very arrogantly unprepared for, where she was like, I don't think this is a good idea. I think you're doing that, blah, blah, blah. And I was definitely coming to it from a good place, but she just very much just didn't receive it well at all. So it sort of made me go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, like I need to actually prioritize the way this looks to people. And so I think that was cool, because I was actually able to talk to Brian and be like, okay, like, how did you navigate this? And he just gave me some cool ideas. And it just really came back to like, make sure that it all starts with my personal relationship with the person that I'm painting, and it has to start with that. And at that point, you just have to be honest about how the process is going. And at that point, it's authentic and whatever. But Brian was super helpful in that. And then I got invited to some painting battle hosted by
paint off.
A paint off. Yeah. There's like
I would
10
pay
artists.
money to see this.
Well, people did. There's like 10 artists. It was hosted by Lululemon, and
I love Lulu. Josie hates it. This is like your trigger, and this is good.
Okay, I understand that Lulu is cool and like sustainable or whatever, but
it's comfortable.
I run
Orange
in it.
County moms
and
just
for
ruin
them.
a lot of things for me. All right, Lululemon is
That's
for
fair.
the basic ass bitches who want to pay $100 for a pair of leggings, and
But
I
it's
just
so
know that they're
comfortable,
not
Josie.
worth $100.
She's like, you can find it for less.
Yes, you can.
I don't know.
No, more power to whoever wants it.
We're gonna go on the Lulu tangent here, because I'm not. At first, I was very much the same way, and my brother, who's by all means way more bougie than I, started, wearing Lulu because his girlfriend turned him on to Lulu, and I was very much I was like, dude, that's ridiculous. I'm never paying that much for clothes. And I don't think I've ever paid that much for clothes except for at that place, because I had someone buy me a shirt from Lulu, and that was 4 years ago, and it's still great. Like, I think it might be worth the money. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, I have a lot of clothes from a lot of different places that I've had for 10 plus years. So
okay,
whatever.
let's get off of the Lululemon tangent. Back to what you were doing.
We're arguing. That's what she said. That's funny.
Please stop arguing, guys.
Okay, Josie, cut it out.
Okay.
Okay, Josie, cut it out.
Sorry, Sarah. What were we talking about? Pictures for people.
You were explaining why
Lululemon battle, okay? Paint battle. Anyway, I got invited to this thing. It's just what it sounded like. We got like an hour to paint based on a theme, and then people voted for their favorite, and whoever won got a bunch of money. But I went, and I hadn't actually met Brian, but he got invited also. So we hung out at this Lulu paint battle for a day. So that's my only other.
Did either of you win?
Neither of us won. And
what?
I think I wanna. It wasn't rigged. It was just that it was a popularity contest, right? So like the person who won because she invited the most people.
Yeah.
Not that her painting was bad. It was great. She's not gonna listen to this. I don't know why I'm.
What are you talking about? This is like really well listened to by artists across the nation.
We're really
I'm sure
popular.
It is. It's just not. I don't know that she's gonna be in the same network. Anyway, it was a cool event. I got to meet Brian. That's where I was going with that.
I am actually super interested in the fact that no matter what branch of whatever we're talking to, whether it's people who design homes or people who run centers for LGBTQIA kids, there is this moment I think everyone comes to where they go, who am I doing this work for? Instead of who am I doing this work at? Making space, churches so a lot of times, a lot of this stuff came from my own encountering people who are like, well, I don't understand why these people aren't coming to our church. And it's this conversation of, yeah, because you're doing church at them.
Right.
And I think even artwork, and we come from like, oh, I'm just trying to create the thing that I know how to create, and I'm creating it in the way that I know how to create. And we kind of miss out on these beautiful moments of, I feel like, encountering another person. I always say, like, making space for other people, make space for ourselves, right? So you're meeting 6 individuals, 6 separate stories, because I think sometimes we glob people into, this is homelessness, this is what causes it, this is what it looks like. And then you have these 6 stories and 6 people who want you to give to 6 different organizations.
And the stories are all completely different. And meeting the people, some are so much higher functioning, who are at the event, who no one would even know. No one's putting together this lady I just talked to is she's the lady on the wall kind of thing.
And that's so key, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the humanization and the like relation and the connection. And we all, there's always so much more to the story and how we get there.
Right.
So I love that.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about what you do, Trent, because as you know, there's a lot of artists out there who just don't give a shit about other people in any way. And because I know you so well, I can say that you're not so concerned with like the image that people have of you. You're concerned with the project, which in the art world, most artists are concerned with how they are viewed, right? And that's where what you're talking about, Sarah, is coming into play. If they're more concerned with like, oh, does this project make me look like a good person? Do I look benevolent? Do I look like I'm being this great human being? Or are you doing the actual work of making art for a change?
And it's driven by inspiration too. I love that you were saying like, and then I like have this thing, and it's not, you don't feel sort of beholden to this is like one way that I do this. It's sort of a lens by which you look through the world, right? So artists have a lens, but we also as people have a lens that we look through the world. So if you're looking for like, what's the next thing I can participate, and you're not like we're walking away and no longer doing that. You just have got, okay, now what I call it an invitation. That's the pastor in me. What is the invitation that what am I being invited into next? And so from this, what are you currently, other than having a gallery in a bar, which I think is the best thing ever?
What am I currently doing? So I currently am just finishing up, I guess, the third thing, which was I produced a mural festival in this same town, which I think this sort of can play into the making spaces a little more literally. So essentially what I did is, recorded a mural festival, which is exactly what it sounds like. We just did a bunch of murals, brought a bunch of different artists into this town and painted the exteriors of businesses and buildings and just beautified the city. Created a more welcoming space for everybody who walks through the town, I think. I just am kind of finishing that up. It was supposed to happen earlier, but with 2020 things got shot in the foot, and then we ended up still doing it in June and July. And then I'm just kind of now finishing like paperwork that came with that. But yeah, that was cool. I was able to, we did nine different walls that were all pretty big walls. So it was probably 6 months of fundraising for that, and then coordinating with the city and then building owners and then the artists and then coordinating the lifts and paint and permits and yada yada to be able to do all these walls. So that's the last thing I did was this mural festival, which is definitely the biggest project. And so at the moment I'm sort of building that again, but next year I'm hoping it's more of like an arts and culture festival as opposed to just murals. So I want to have the mural element, but then also, have some some other things. And one of the main things is there's this vacant space right in the downtown of Livermore that has just been sitting there for years. It's just like pinned in between these two buildings, and for a whole bunch of boring reasons, they haven't been able to develop it. So it's just been sitting there as this gravel lot. So we're quite literally just going to take that dead space and activate it. So we're doing murals on both sides, and the goal is to be able to do sort of like a shipping container concept and have some food and some sort of beverage option, and then a little sculpture garden and a fountain and an ivy wall.
Oh, just a little sculpture garden, just a little, no big deal.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to say it like that, but yeah. But I think that's the most obvious like space I'm trying to make, is activating this empty lot, and try to do that within the the festival type programming for next year.
That's incredible. It's bringing art to people that I think murals to me are so inspiring, because sort of bringing the common person art. So if you're not able to make it to the Getty, or you're not able to or maybe like you didn't even know that art was important to you at all, it really is a common way to look at art. I often talk about the idea of churches used to be the places that the common person would experience art, right? Because people couldn't read, and so stories were in stained glass. And so the common person, the person who couldn't have like the Castle of Versailles or whatever it might be, was getting to see that kind of level of workmanship. The only place they were seeing it was within a church. And then you take it and you make it even more common. So it's the outside now, not the inside. And people are experiencing these like profound images, or even if they're not that profound, but they're just beautifying the space and sort of giving it this new life. Like, I love that you're saying we're activating the space. That's, an incredible way to think about it, right? So it's like, here is something that once was kind of something you just drive by, right? Not even maybe think about it, unless you're like the three of us who are like, what could you do with that? Which is
that's like, I don't not think about it. I get excited when I see dead stuff.
I run my neighborhood thinking about what I would do to every house in my neighborhood, like every single house. I'm like, I wouldn't do that, but I would do, and I think
100%.
That's the neat thing about people who have the vision for it, but then welcoming people into it. Like, I don't care if it doesn't affect other people. I think Josie's was ticking on a little bit. Some artists, do art for art's sake. I had a sign in my when I was a resident advisor when I was in grad school, and I had a bunch of artists on my floor, and I had a sign that said, just because no one understands you doesn't make you an artist. And I think there's
I love that,
because there's this sense of like, I'm doing it for my inner, and I find these people like usually pretty troubled, because it's like this inner muse, and it haunts me. But the people who can say, what is my work trying to do in the world, which is why I love you that you have these three things that, like, me, my people, like the people, and then the project, like, right? It's like how there's a way of thinking through it. It's not just about you. Yeah.
To build off what you're saying, I just think art has and I think this is, maybe you might be touching on something.
Literally, that's the name of my memoir. She might be touching on something. Keep going.
You might be touching on something. That's funny. Josie, were you in did we write thesis papers in the same class? Were you in that class with
I think so. The class that everybody hated but that I loved. The conversation-based class.
I'm pretty sure we were in the same class.
Catherine Wagley, is that what?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Catherine, I love Catherine.
Yeah, she was great, and we just talked about all this art stuff, just pretentious stuff in the least pretentious way. We were just talking about all of that, and I think a lot of it, she was kind of just touching on art historically, especially at the upper echelon of it. If you want, has sort of always been, like created by extremely poor people for extremely rich people, which I was just kind of reading, and like I'm trying to learn, like actively learn like this business system of like the art world, and I just kind of didn't like it, and so I think a lot of it is like, how do I still, I guess, elevate the level of art without being like boxed into that
thing. It's only for the upper, it's for what are the Patreons.
Patrons.
Yeah,
Patrons. Patreon is podcasting. Patrons are people who buy art.
Well, Patreon is like
It's a platform.
Is a
Yeah.
platform that allows
Yeah.
people to be your patrons,
Right.
micro patrons, I guess.
Right. I mean,
But
Trent,
yeah,
I love the way you do art because, I mean, we've talked about this a lot in that senior thesis class, was this idea that art was for rich people and the art world is not open to access for all, which is unfair.
and
I
then
mean,
also that poor
well,
people,
yeah.
artists have to be poor people on
Mhm.
the flip side. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you make art in a way that is accessible to all, which not a lot of people are doing. I mean, not a lot of people take the time to think through who's going to see this, what are they going to think when they see this, and how can I make it open to anybody that's willing to see it? Because, I mean, sure, the Getty is free in Los Angeles, but not everybody's comfortable going to the Getty and interacting with the Getty because it's so bougie. I mean, even I don't feel
I love the
very
Getty.
comfortable.
That tells you something about
The
me.
Getty is really cool.
I mean, it is, but, or like the Broad. I refuse to step foot in the Broad because what's his face, Mr. Broad, took advantage of poor communities and continues to take advantage of poor charter schools. So, I mean, the art world is just this space where it's not very nice to most people, but you're making it nice.
Accessible. I love that word, accessible.
Yeah,
but also nice, also like kind to people that aren't, because you have accessibility in Los Angeles. You can go to these places, but they're not nice.
Totally. I agree. Yeah, I'm doing, I was playing around with podcast ideas at one point. I don't have time to do one, but I was brainstorming about it anyway. And what we wanted to do was, where I'm living now is sort of like a wine country. I think the reason, so I picked Livermore, I keep talking about it. It sort of has a little bit of everything. It's sort of like a Napa-ish wine country, but then it's also got this weird cowboy culture. And then it's also a lot of people who just, middle class people who just can't afford to live in San Francisco, but, you know, will live in Livermore and then commute in. It just has this weird mix of different types of people. Is originally like a Native American land, so there's got a lot of those. It's just, there's a lot of different things going on. But one of the things, the podcast ideas was, we wanted to do like wine and fast food pairing, just like
Basically how I live my life. Keep going.
Right. Like how do we take this like bougie, uninclusive culture and just like bring it to people, right, in a way that's like digestible. So I actually have an art show coming up on the 30th, and we're doing like a donuts and wine pairing.
I love
which I'm
it.
super excited about. But yeah, I think it's just kind of all playing about on, I think I do some of this subconsciously without really thinking about it, but just trying to like find new ways to take these things that have been very often held for this sort of class of people, and kind of just trying to make them accessible, I guess.
Well, that's why we think of you as a space maker, because you're someone who is able to be in a space that not everyone can be in, and you're sort of opening the door for other people, saying, hey, like here's this art for you to be impacted by, but and also for the people who are in that bougie environment, here's some folks that you may not, you're making space for them to encounter people and work that they may not themselves get to encounter, and both are changed, right? When you exist in the same space, both are changed. I think sometimes areas outside of San Francisco get a bad rap because, oh, that's a rough area to live in, or that's a really bougie area and no one can afford it. Or it's so interesting how, you know, different people, you know, the joke is what, California is one country with like a lot of different states in it, right?
Yeah.
It's so different. I drive up to Oregon a lot, and I drive through Central California. I'm like, this is a different country. This is not the same as Orange County or LA or any of, it's a very different
Basically
vibe.
the South.
In some ways, yes. Yeah, right. And so for people to kind of encounter each other, this is my whole thing about proximity. I think that's the only chance for us to maybe not fully get to an understanding of each other, but we've been taught so often to fear that which we don't understand. So, you know, it's interesting to me how many people are like, well, I don't know about art. Like that's weird or whatever it might be. And then they encounter it and they're like, oh, actually, like this has been profound for me. So it's really cool work that you're doing. And I think it's neat. And I also love that you are definitely like very chill personality about it. Like you're like, no, this is just the thing I'm doing. And I hear all of it has this idea of accessibility for, and she won't say this, but Josie talks very highly of you. But like, don't tell her I told you that.
I'll say it. That's fine. He's cool. I wouldn't be friends with him if it wasn't cool.
See, there we go.
I talk very highly about you all the time too.
Thanks.
She thinks everyone talks very highly of her. Actually, that's not true.
That's not true. I think everybody hates me.
You don't think that?
No, she likes to act like she thinks that, but then she's like, I'm pretty sure they hate me. We are kind of rounding our time up, but we always like to ask this one question, if you're cool with it. The final question we usually ask is, what is one way that someone can make space for other people? Like one tangible way, whether it be in art. And again, we make it as vague as possible because we want you to be able to sort of speak from what you think.
I think, and this can be totally off the art thing, just in general. Just oh, sorry. Never mind. Let me.
No, you can totally do it.
I think just in where we are at, I think our environment, and a lot of it has to do with social media and whatever, it's just becoming very toxic, very hard for people to have tough conversations coming from two different sides of the aisle. And I'm probably privileged in that I'm able to do that. Like we were talking about earlier, like I just can have a logical conversation with that, but that's because I'm just like middle class white guy with like I just like, you know what I mean? I don't necessarily identify with too many triggers. But yeah, I just think that anything, people can do is just have a tough conversation with somebody who disagrees with you and just listen, whichever side of the aisle you're on. I guess that's it.
And it sounds like you're saying listening without reaction. Sort of
yeah,
listening.
or just without taking it
Feelings
personally. Like people, whatever people's opinion is or view on something, they have a reason. It might be a bad reason for thinking the way they think, right? But you only change their mind by like hearing where it's coming from, or you only get your mind changed by hearing where it's coming from. So I just feel like it's important for us to all be pliable and listen to other people.
I recently read a thing that I think is really neat. They did a study of how do people's opinions change. They found that people's opinions don't change by having a conversation with someone who is trying to change your opinion. It's by having conversations with people who are having a conversation with you without the intent of changing your opinion. Right. Yeah. And so they've done all these really cool studies where they find that people who are on opposing the Palestinian-Israeli conversations, all these incredibly, like, you want to talk about get skin in the game, literally, they find that people are able to come closer to each other's center when they both come to the conversation not hoping to change the other. And I think we are taught often that the other person is literally another kind of thing other than a person. That's actually why I think art and proximity and all these things are so important, is because I don't think we're going to be able to get past this until we start seeing the humanity and the similarity, even when it doesn't feel very similar. So thank you for joining us today on our podcast. We have a couple of things that oh my gosh, it was so great. I cannot wait to come up there. It's going to be great. Livermore, here I come. Cool. So thank you for joining us, friends. We have a couple things. Josie, where can people find us?
You can find the Making Spaces podcast on Instagram at Making Spaces Podcast. You can email us, makingspacespodcast@gmail.com.
One of us should probably check that. Yeah, keep going.
I think that's right. You can find me at Josie Takes the World on Instagram. I'd give you my Twitter, but I'm very offensive, so I guess I'll just give it to you anyways. At Josie Takes the World, just because Twitter limits things.
Yeah.
I don't follow you on Twitter. I'm gonna do that.
Oh, it's spicy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
Sarah is on Instagram at Rev.Sarah Heath. You're also on Twitter.
Yeah, occasionally. I think I tweet once a month.
That's enough.
Yeah, it's nothing too scandalous. Sometimes people get angry at me just because I have ovaries and I'm a pastor. So sometimes there's that, but there's not a lot.
Trent, why don't you plug yourself for a hot second?
Where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at TrentArt_, because TrentArt was taken. And yeah, that's the best place to start.
So it's Trent_art?
TrentArt_.
Trent Art _ and then I cut you off. What was the other one you said?
Or my website, which is etrentart.com.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, friends, please, if you listen to the podcast, which you can hear it on, well, you are listening to it, or you can watch it on YouTube, which that blows my mind that people just want to watch you talk.
I didn't know that was a thing people could do.
Yeah, it's a thing people do. You can find us again for our podcast for YouTube. You can find us youtube.com/Rev.Sarah Heath / is that a dash? Oh, it's a slash. A dash is this, a slash is this. See? That's why we have you around, Joes. And please rate, review, comment. Even if you say something mean, it helps people find us. So,
but I'll come after you, so be careful.
But she'll come after you. I won't. I'll probably just hug you because I'll be worried about you. And then, like, what? Why did they do that? Also, please leave us voicemails. We are so excited to be able to have our listener voicemails. We've got a couple coming out. There will be one at the start of this, where we just sort of share what's your favorite space and why. Is the question that we're asking right now. All right, friends, we will see you next week, where we will be
saving a space for you.
I like how creepy you are when you say that. Saving a space for you. All right, I'm going to